Hi, adventurers. It's Genevieve here with Chris from Sober Sidekick. I am so excited to share with you about his inspirational story, and we're going to talk about how Sober Sidekick is creating what I love, the greatest wave of comeback stories the world has ever seen. So before we dive in, talking all about this incredible story that is going to inspire you and motivate you, and there's just so much wisdom to be gleaned from Chris today, I want to share with you guys a little bit about Trident Coffee. Trident takes so much pride in craft, and they help you fuel your day with organic, keto, friendly canned lattes and roasted whole bean coffee found in Sprouts nationwide and in all high-end natural grocers in Southern California. You can also visit one of their tap rooms located in San Diego to immerse yourself in the full experience and find them online at Trident Coffee. Trident Coffee, live life full steam ahead. So, Chris, welcome to the Adventurous Podcast.
Thanks, Jen. Excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. I'm so glad that you were able to make it today. You have just your story, you allude to it a little bit on the website. You can tell there's just so much richness and it's so nuanced. And I mean, it's an incredible story. I'm going to go ahead and link that in the show notes for everybody. But Chris, I'd love for you to start off sharing with our adventurers here about Sober Sidekick. And then let's dive into what led you to starting this incredible company that you have today.
Yeah. So, Jen, as you mentioned, mission of Sober Sidekick is to scale the most epic wave of real life comeback stories the world has ever seen. And for us, one of the things we recognize is that alcohol is no one's problem, but for many people, it's their only solution. And it's their solution for what we view the big enemy to be, which is isolation. I look at, unfortunately, some of the friends I've had over the years who are no longer here. And, their death, whether it was an overdose or whatever, it was not because they loved drugs or they loved alcohol or they loved anything in specific. It's because they were isolated and they didn't know how to break that cycle of isolation. So Sidekick exists to create a world where there's no scenario of which, if you're struggling, if you're suffering with anything, that you won't write a post and receive written support from strangers around the world and nothing but positive support. Mm-hmm. We call it scaling empathy. We call it our empathy algorithm. Mm-hmm. So what we're here to do is we're here to break the cycle of isolation. Research says that isolation is the second leading cause of early death. So we're here to fight isolation. And as a result, more people get sober.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is so special about what you're doing and is there's so much drive behind it is because it's not really about a business. It's just so happens that a business is the mechanism for creating the purpose and the impact in the world that you're meant to create. And, I don't know about you. I hope you believe this to be true, but I truly believe that you were meant to create this. And I believe that you were chosen. And, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story because I think, kind of that moment you had, I feel like that was the moment where it was maybe awakened in you or put into you. So I'd love to, dive a little bit into, where were you before you started Sober Sidekick that led to you creating this amazing company, we'll call it, that we have today?
Yeah. 30 days before I wrote the first line of code for Sober Sidekick, it was Thanksgiving Day in 2018, and I was waking up on the sidewalk for the fourth day in a row. Was completely isolated, no phone, no wallet, no idea where I was. And, the question of how did I get here was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And, that day I didn't have a ton of hope that day, but, I asked myself, like, what if question, what if today was day one of my own comeback story? And, the concept of one day or day one is really a theme throughout Sober Sidekick and throughout everything we do, and throughout like personal development in general. Even, for me today as an entrepreneur, with anything, it's a question of one day or day one, going to the gym one day or day one,
Yeah.
reading a book one day or day one.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just it's a mindset shift that, once unlocked, it can change everything, as I saw within my own life.
That's amazing. I think, one of the things I think about as you tell that story is the judgment that we often have on people that we see on the street, thinking, these people are this or these people are that. I bet there were people who passed you by during that time and never thought, even once about who you were, who you might be capable of doing. And all it took was one thought in your mind to change everything, to say, what if this could be different? And I love the phrasing of that question that we can pose ourselves. What if? Because that's possibility versus why is this way,
Yeah.
which is like a closing off. If you say, what if this, it opens ourselves up to things that are beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things I remember that day is I had tried to get help in the form of walking into an emergency room in a hospital. And as I was walking away, like, they told me, this is not a homeless shelter. Here's a number you can call. And, apparently, the days before, I didn't remember it. I had tried the same thing. And as I was walking away, I heard the security guard say, I fucking hate this guy. He keeps coming back. And that was a hard pill to swallow at the time. But at the same time, in my head, it was just like, me too. Like, I hate this guy also.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's just like, I still had the what if thought going through my mind. And it's like, what if this really is day one of my recovery? And what if, this guy is wrong about me? And it's the trap of guilt and shame that, many times in all aspects of life, it's easy to fall into, where we believe the story we tell ourselves, or we believe our past to be our future. And, it's in all aspects of life, it's so easy to fall into that trap and negate the opportunities for change, the what if, the possibilities, as you said.
So you had the what if this could be the last, the start of me not being this in this situation. What then happened to have you say, what if I were going to write that first line of code? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So I was 30 days into my sobriety journey.
That's not very long.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I mean, it's a lifetime in some ways, and it's also not very long in a lot of ways. So,
yeah. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a long period of time, but for me at that point in time, it was a very long period of time, but at the same time, not a lot of time. But I was in a sober living, and it was either Christmas or it was the day after Christmas, and I'd gone to an AA meeting and I'd gotten a 30-day chip. And I was sort of thinking, like, I really think this time is different, because I had told myself I was going to quit times in the past, and I'd gotten a couple weeks, this and that. And I, also part of the story I had been telling myself all these years is, I used to be this, I used to be an entrepreneur. I did all these different amazing things. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. Like, will I ever get back to that point again? Right. And I remembered my first startup, which was an app for undiscovered musicians that went viral on Twitter on launch day. And there was a concept of musicians helping musicians, which was the one thing about the concept that worked. So I was sitting in that meeting and watching people support each other, and was like realizing, like, what if I could make the same support that's going on in this room right now available round the clock 24/7 in real time,
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time. And that's where, in my mind, I rebranded the give to receive algorithm for undiscovered musicians as the empathy algorithm
Mm-hmm.
in this space. And it just clicked. It made so much sense. And I got home and I just started coding. And 30 days later, their Apple approved the first version of Sober Sidekick in the App Store.
So the empathy algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
it works. And it is, I mean, I don't want to go into all this stuff about, Sober Sidekick, but it's actually helping people in the way that you envisioned it would. And, I look at this and I think, how big is this problem? And how
Mm-hmm.
simple really is the algorithm? You don't have to tell us. Where do you, and then you put it very simple. You just say basically, you kind of were like, what if these people helped each other? And I made that into an algorithm and you started writing code. Like, where did that come from? Where did the idea flow from?
Yeah. Well, where did the idea for the empathy algorithm come from?
Well, you were inspired by the room, but
Mm-hmm.
then you somehow translated that into this very powerful algorithm.
Yeah.
That is, I feel like that is a creation. That isn't, it's like that's flow right there,
You, yeah.
you know?
Well, I had the advantage of I had already tested this algorithm with thousands of musicians
Mm-hmm.
in my first startup.
Oh,
And
okay. So you kind of just like tweaked it for a different thing and rebuilt it, but you knew that it was going to.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
had proven the concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just for context, this was an app where if you're an artist, you can guarantee feedback on your own content by providing feedback to others.
Mm-hmm.
So app would play a song for me, I listen to it and I give it a rating. And as soon as I give a rating, my music then plays in real time for another artist to listen
Mm-hmm.
to and rate. So that was the concept. It worked. Obviously, a few layers of iterations in order for this to work for Sidekick,
Mm-hmm.
for this space. But so much, I mean, that experience, that's where, there's no such thing as failure. It was just
Mm-hmm.
learnings. And,
Yeah.
without those failures, I wouldn't have been in the position to come out with an idea on the spot
Right.
for this space.
So if you were to meet somebody today, and let's even say they were an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
like you, and they're struggling with addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they're in a place similar to where you were at,
Mm-hmm.
and you were to run into them at the park. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, Anyone who is in a very dark place and is having a lot of difficulty on their journey,
Mm-hmm.
based off of what you know today, what would you want to tell that person?
Yeah. Yeah. First thing I would do is listen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because many of us feel trapped when we feel we aren't heard.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would do is listen, and I would probably relate. Probably many things that they say, many thoughts that they express are thoughts that I also feel, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
also can relate to. And I guess taking a step back, I consider my entrepreneurial journey to be very, very similar to my recovery journey.
Yeah.
One thing I say when
Yeah.
it comes to my own recovery journey is I'm not a better person than I was before. I'm not a stronger person than I was before.
Mm-hmm.
I've just had a change in perspective. Um, you know, I,
Yeah.
I think it's Jim Rohn who says like something like it's very easy to live a great life. And then someone asks him, why doesn't everyone live a great life? And he says, because it's very easy to live a bad life.
Mm-hmm.
And, the perspective change that has happened for me as a result of, letting the guilt and shame go
Mm-hmm.
and learning to be vulnerable and learning to be real and learning to be honest. You know, someone asks me how I'm doing, it's always easy to say good.
Yeah. Fine. Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I now have people in my life that I trust where if they ask me how I'm doing, I can be real with them. And it's keeping those emotions and those feelings trapped inside, which leads to alcoholism. It leads to depression. It leads to suicide. It leads to so many different things. And learning to let go of that internal stigma, that internal guilt and shame, and recognize that it might not be your fault that you're in this position, but there's some opportunities to learn from it, grow from it, and then turn it into your purpose. I believe that purpose comes from suffering.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the problems that we experienced in this world, the problems that we suffered through. When reframed the right way, it becomes our purpose and our source of life.
Absolutely. I think you're hitting on something that I think is so, so powerful, just being a human in the world, but especially what I've discovered in business is the illusion that we're separate from each other. This person is that, and I am this, and therefore we are not the same. And this person is not an addict, and I am, therefore we are different, and or vice versa. And we look at this and you realize as soon as you're willing to kind of drop that belief that we might be different and entertain the idea that we might all actually be the same, you learn, and I've learned that age, you know, socioeconomic, geography, culture, we're all the same. And for me, it's like I've learned sometimes if I go first and share something, they are right there with me. And then suddenly we have a real connection. But the thing that keeps us trapped is that belief in separation and, you know, the shame and the guilt and all of that we carry that keeps us separate. But like, we're the same. We're not different whatsoever. And, but I think it takes courage to be able to step forward and be the one to say, I'm going to explore how myself and this person are actually the same, rather than get into my stories about how we're different.
Yeah. I so relate with that. And one of the bullet points on Sidekick is we're a we platform, we being with empathy and without ego. And where I agree with you very strongly is ego, like I used to think ego was pride. And, you know, since then I've learned that it's your entire self-conception. And we spend so much of life trying to protect that conception of ourselves and also the perception that others have of that self. But none of that is the self. It's all a projection of self. And when you let go of ego, we are all the same. You know, we're just the universe observing itself, you know, and yeah, when you're able to, and, you know, guilt and shame can only come from ego because those are adjectives for a self that's not real. And I relate to everything you're saying there so much.
So obviously we could rabbit hole on this topic probably for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do another one. But I think that when it's really scary to drop your ego, because your ego is designed, it's there for a reason. It's to protect you and your self-perception. And so we have this fear automatically where we say, if I'm to drop this, then who am I?
Yeah.
You know, it almost feels like you're free falling when you let go of a piece of something that you have decided is your identity, then you have nothing. And you can see it as 2 things: fear, scary, or you can see it as another thing, freedom. Now I'm free.
Have you read The Untethered Soul?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love that book. In fact, it's like dog-eared because sometimes I just read it a couple pages
Yeah.
because it's just so profound. Yeah, I love that book. But there was something I wanted to ask you about, and I'm just like, it keeps flittering out of my mind. But it's on that topic that we were just discussing. What? Oh, purpose. So,
Hmm.
you were talking about how, like, when we are torn down, that's where
Hmm.
we find it. And, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs and some who are really successful and are grasping for that purpose. They've got the money, they've done this and that, whatever, but they don't feel aligned. They don't feel the purpose, they don't feel the impact, and they're looking for that. And, it's really interesting because you just alluded to the idea that because you have it,
Hmm.
I have it, I have a very, I don't have an addiction story, but I have a rock bottom terrible story. Of course,
Hmm.
we all do. But you basically kind of what you're saying is like the place that we're all avoiding going is the place where you're going to find that,
Mm.
that dark depths, facing.
There's a quote for
Yeah.
that, which is, and I forget who it's from, but it's the cave you fear holds the treasure you speak, or the cave you fear
Fear.
holds the treasure you seek.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who said that? Do you know? It's good.
I don't know.
I'll
I wish
Google it.
I knew.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Mhm.
Show notes, guys. I'll Google that quote. But yeah, it's amazing. And I think, I don't want to say, oh, some people have never had a struggle. Everyone has had a struggle. But I think
Mhm.
being present with what is when you're in that bad place is where you're going to find the purpose that's yours. And, the purpose that's yours isn't necessarily like make some money so I can provide for my family or,
Mhm.
any of those things. And that's why I said Sober Sidekick is a purpose that just so happens to have like a business attached to it and some in a component, but it's not really about a business at all. It's just that's what it was. It was created. I'm curious, as you're building this and you're growing this,
Mhm.
overcoming you, the worst has basically already happened to you. So it's sort of like, come at me, life, because you can't do anything worse than what's already occurred. Have you had a moment, since writing that first line of code where you just were like, I'm going to quit. This is too hard. This is not going to work. This is rough,
Yeah, yeah, I've had a lot of those moments. So context, uh, first year and a half of my recovery, I was living in a sober living. There was not a scenario where I wasn't sharing a bedroom with at least one other person.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point in time where I was sharing a room with three other guys and a house with 15 people in it,
Mm-hmm.
and new people every week because people are relapsing, people are leaving,
Yeah.
this and that, just a constant cycle. So all this chaos going around me while I'm working a job and then coming home and coding Sober Sidekick at night. And, in the beginning, as is true with almost every startup, outside of your early adopters, you don't get much positive feedback.
No.
Um, you know, your opportunities to network, your opportunities to pitch are very limited. So staying focused on the early adopters. And one thing I'm grateful for is Sidekick had early adopters day one,
Mm-hmm.
and that people found us in the App Store through search that I didn't know. And it was only like 5 to 10 a
That's
day.
very inspiring.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice. Yeah, I know for me too, like sending out email lists or emails to my email list or, things like that. It's like, great. I'm super glad my mom opens my emails.
Yeah.
It's really motivating when you have people you don't know. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it
Mm-hmm.
really was a shitty UX in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But people used it for its purpose, which was this was the one place in the world where if they speak out about what's going on, someone will reach out to them.
Yeah.
A peer will reach out to them. And
Mm-hmm.
that value proposition was stronger than the bad UX and the ugly colors and the ugly logo. That value proposition rung true. So like, as I'm living in a sober living, scraping by, barely eating, And, like I had a really tough month where I was, I was one of the people who broke down a bathroom door to find one of our roommates no longer alive.
Oh my God.
And, so like just constant reminders of how real this is. And it was that realness that kept me going, but also made it easy to quit. So it was kind of a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
but where I'm grateful for is it kept me going. And, why I feel my entrepreneurial journey and my recovery journey are so intertwined is, I think of like, it was like 6 months in and I went to San Francisco to do a pitch event, and it was like my first pitch event for Sober Sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
It did not go well. And
I've been there.
what was worse is after it didn't go well,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that the hotel I had booked for myself, you had to check in before 9 p.m. And it was 9:30. So there was no way to get to the hotel that I had paid for. And also at that point in time, I was literally spending I had no wiggle room when it came to budget.
Yeah.
And I was like $50 in my bank account thinking, how am I going to find a place to stay for the night? It's cold, this and that. And then the thought came to mind, I know how to stay warm. I'll buy whiskey. And that was 6 months into my recovery. So I walked into a store, bought a bottle, and was about to go completely back to where I started. And I just sat there on the curb and, tried to lift the bottle up, and I just couldn't do it. And it's just like all these reminders, remember why you started. One bad day doesn't have to mean this can be either the end of everything or this can be one bad day.
Yeah.
And looking back, after walking away and finding a hostel that I could stay in for $40, stayed on the fourth bunk bed. I woke up the next morning happier than I ever was, because I realized the enemy is not outside of me. The enemy is within me. And as long as I'm willing to look inward, there's no scenario that I can't push through. And then looking back, I recognize the significance of that day, because if I had drank on the street that day, there would not be 150,000 members.
I have chills right now. I'm like, that. This is so amazing. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I say that, and for that reason, I say this to our members all the time. The day you want to quit is the most important day of your life. And I literally just told someone that 30 minutes before this call, because he shared a story of walking in, wanting to quit, walking through 10 bars. He decided, if I'm going to relapse, it's got to be on my brand. So he walked to 10 different bars. None of them had his brand. And he went home and went to sleep. And, he felt shame about it. And, the reframing that was happening was, no, that is a victory. That is way better. That is way more of a victory than the days where it was easy. It's the days that you want to quit that are the defining moments, because it's when most people would quit.
Yeah.
So I'm about to just rant and rant and rant. So I'm going to stop myself.
No, I think that's just such an incredible story. And you told such a great soundbite there, which is the day you want to quit is the day that is your most triumphant day, the day you want to quit and that you don't. And I think that rings true, not just for people who are on a sobriety journey, but for people who are just doing something really hard. The day, you're always going to be tempted. I feel like in a way we sometimes get tested, I think. It's are you going to go back to the thing that you did before? Are you going to go this route? And it's really hard to not do the thing. And you have to say, I'm not going to do it. And, that's almost for me also when I get to up level to the next step
Mhm.
of, whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. So, wow, I think that's just like, that's an amazing story. And I love that so many people, it gives so much perspective too, because there's a lot of people listening to this who might have a bad day. Maybe they got a parking ticket
Mhm.
or something like that,
Yeah.
and it definitely puts some perspective on it for sure. Um, so when you are thinking about what it is that's possible now, you've got this amazing mindset, you know, in terms of saying, what if this were possible, instead of saying, why is this way? And what if this, what if that? And, Sober Sidekick has definitely had some great success. Chris has won some awards, and Sober Sidekick has won some awards recently that are very impressive. And, when you think about what is possible for you guys? What do you see happening for you now that you have this mindset?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a big what if question is, what if our healthcare was community driven? And what if
Mm-hmm.
we were less dependent on medical professionals and expensive care in so many areas? What if we were more dependent on each other? Because in many, especially in behavioral health and especially mental health,
Mm-hmm.
um, so much of the need uh, for, prescriptions and services and all these different things that do have value in themselves, but part of the reason for the high demand and lack of access is because of what we're missing in our real world.
Right.
And the community that we're missing and the isolation that we feel, like across the board, and not just substance abuse,
Mm-hmm.
even when it comes to diabetes, there's studies that show the more isolated you are, the less you stick to your diabetes medication and your plan.
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's a
so
big thing for Alzheimer's disease too. The onset of
Mhm.
Alzheimer's accelerates the more isolated that people are. And, I feel like I hear a lot of younger people criticizing the older generation for, um, their medical problems, and the onset of them. But I think
Mhm.
about how we proliferate their isolation as a society. And it's
Mhm.
like, if you stigmatize people
Mhm.
who have hypertension or people
Mhm.
who have obesity or something like that, and you stigmatize people who are
Mhm.
older or whatever, we as a society are proliferating the very problems that we want to see, because it's driven by isolation.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and no one wins when it's me versus you.
No.
And we, like you said, realizing that we're all the same, that we're all one.
Hmm.
When when I'm focusing on what I see in myself in another person,
Hmm.
we can do nothing but help each other.
Yeah.
uh, but when I am in ego, and when I am in comparison mode, then that's where I miss out on an opportunity to not only build someone else up, but build myself up.
Hmm.
And it's these small interactions on a daily basis, but in general, how we operate as society, we just, our mental health problem and our behavioral health problem is a problem as a result of a lack of community. And we can't depend on the healthcare system to fix, the basic human needs that we're missing in the real world. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought of something as you were talking just there, that it's like, when you're sitting across from somebody and people are just thinking in their head, what can I get?
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes they think, what can I give? That's
Mm.
still transactional, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's altruistic, whether you're giving or taking, you're still participating in a transaction. What if we asked ourselves when we were in an interaction with someone, who can I be?
Mm.
And even if you're only going to be like, who can I be in this moment here with Chris? You know,
Mm.
and it doesn't, that takes away any aspect of saying, I have to give this or I have to get that or whatever. Who can I be? And then what comes from that is what's possible because of the ability to just be in this moment. you know?
Mm.
And, I like the idea of that because I feel like especially in entrepreneurship, there's so much pressure to transact
Oh yeah.
all the time. What can I
Yeah.
get? What can I give? How do I add value? How do I take value? Blah, 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 and it's
Hmm.
exhausting. You just
Yeah.
want to stop and be like, can't we just hang out? Like,
Oh yeah.
sorry, and so that just kind of hit me when you were telling that, when you were talking.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I've noticed that when it comes to pitching
Mm-hmm.
is like, and I've been more and more intentional as of late to start a pitch stating who I really am. Um,
Oh.
Not in that way, but
Mm-hmm.
more of an internal intention. Like I'm just going to put myself out there in the first 30 seconds uh,
Mm-hmm.
and be real. And it's being real in that first 10 to 15 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
where then no one in the room has any power over me.
Mm-hmm.
And my insecurity, like my insecurities are out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And once those insecurities are to the side, then I can connect.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pitch is about connecting and seeing what different people relate to and seeing what um, is inspiring or um, is resonating
Mm-hmm.
and connecting at a human level. And then for me, like I get to turn a pitch into just human connection and like
Yeah.
seeing the look in people's eyes and seeing
Mm-hmm.
the head nods and then after the pitch, hearing people talk about how they relate. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an addict, but I was depressed all of last year and I was stuck in this rut. And I completely agree with you that this is the problem that we need to be solving. Like, I've talked to people at levels that I didn't think I'd ever be talking to, and I've seen them open up and be real right back with me, and share things that I don't know if they've shared with others.
Yeah.
And for me, that is inspiring to see, um, and that's what keeps me alive in this pitching process because
Well,
it's
and
very
I
easy to
think
go dead
you're
in this
infusing
process.
your business with something that means more than just money and opportunity. So even if these people that you're meeting don't invest or get involved or whatever, it doesn't matter because I almost see it as this like inertia that you're creating when you're out there. It's like, I know there's people watching you that you don't even know are watching you.
Mm,
And it's because of who you're being. And it's because of these conversations and it's because of this connection, not because Sober Sidekick is growing fast AF and you guys are doing amazing things. Like that's cool. But you know what? Lots of platforms are growing fast. So like it's not that. There's
mm,
something else when you are out in the world. And by you, I mean you, yes, but people.
mhm,
Um, and you're just connecting with people real. Some
mhm,
people are going to be drawn to the e- universe that is Sober Sidekick
mhm,
and others aren't, and it starts to become this thing that's bigger than itself. And I talk
mm,
about that a lot with what we're doing and over here at Suncoast and things like that. Is like it's growing so fast because there's a multiplier effect.
mm,
And some people don't understand the multiplier effect. And so I'll say, oh, everyone's aligned on the vision and we all care about health equity. No, 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 no. It's because we're out there in the world
mm,
speaking this truth, and the people who believe it are coming in and they're doing the same, and it feeds itself.
mm.
And there's something there that I can't really put into words, but it's more of like a movement or an energy than it is a alignment of values. Quote unquote.
Thesis.
Yeah, thesis. Yeah, whatever that might be. And you use these words because they're the words you're supposed to use. You get the pitch deck out because you're supposed to use it, but at the end of the day, there's something beneath that, and that's what people are getting involved in, you know.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, because we're all gonna die, and
Because we're
On
all
our
going to die
deathbed.
one day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on our deathbed, we're gonna think about different things than we think about on the day to day. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's those types of connections that, we'll be proud of one day when we're on our deathbed. And the mission,
Hmm.
it's like, what do I want my life to mean is the
But you
question.
can be proud of that today, and you can ask yourself that today, because why wait until we're dead or dying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be like, who am I being today? I know, I mean, anyone who's been in like a terrible place,
Hmm.
when you're grasping and you're like, what is it that I most want? It's not usually like more money or this or that. Like I remember one of the things that I just most desperately wanted was peace. I was like,
Mm,
I just want to feel at peace. I can't,
mm,
like, this turmoil and
mm,
torment has to end. And, so now one of the things I most want is peace and
mm,
seeking that. And then the other thing too, of course, is, what drives me the most and what means the most to me. And it's, true connection and realness and, so I seek to create real relationships with our investors, real relationships with our founders and everyone in the ecosystem, not just transactional, because, you know, not just when I'm dying, but
mhm.
when it's Friday afternoon and I'm
Yeah.
tired, I want to feel the way that I want to feel about what it
Mhm.
is that I'm doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I brought up the deathbed point just in that, like, I think it was Les Brown who said it, but like there's a test that I kind of put myself through whenever I'm like stuck, or whenever I'm conflicted, and it's
Mhm.
asking myself, what will I care about when it comes to today when I'm on my
Mhm.
deathbed? And I'm
Oh,
probably
yeah.
not going to care about what the outcome of the meeting was. I'm
Mhm.
going to care about the fact that I showed up.
Mhm.
I'm probably not going to care about whether or not I got funding in this pitch or a different pitch, but I'm going to care about whether or not I was willing to be honest and real about myself, and not hold back, or stay true, speak boldly about what the mission was.
That you were
So
on the court.
yeah,
You were on the
yeah,
court, you know.
oh
Even
yeah.
I always feel that way. I'm like, even if I fail, because I have failed many times, and what's the likelihood I'm going to fail? I don't know. Hi, let's knock on wood. But,
Mhm,
I'd like to say, at least if I'm on the court every second and I'm playing full out, I won't regret my failure, but I
mhm,
will regret it if I wasn't on the court and if I wasn't playing full out. Regret
mhm.
city,
Oh yeah. Yeah, the only
So,
thing you can't do, or the only thing that can't be undone, is not making a decision. That's the only thing that can't be undone.
wait a minute, go unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Also, not my quote. But
Mhm.
I listened to so many podcasts. Um, but the statement is, the only thing that you can't undo is not making a decision. Because if you make a
Mm.
decision, you can learn from it.
Mhm.
But not making a decision, all you have is looking back and saying, I wonder what would have happened if I had made a decision,
Oh,
or
yeah.
if I
Mhm.
taken action. So, like, the only
Mhm.
thing you can't undo is not taking action. Um,
Right. Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. I love that. And I kind of feel like you were talking about how we take the past and we
Hmm.
make it mean something about us today. And then
Hmm.
therefore we live that every single day. And so when you think about taking action, it's
Hmm.
like really the only thing that matters is now,
Hmm.
now, 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 because either you're taking action or you're not taking action.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I was telling myself I was taking action.
Hmm.
I was justifying why I wasn't taking action. I had lots of great reasons why, but at the
Hmm.
end of the day, all I had were my own reasons and my own excuses for why I wasn't who I wanted to be and why I didn't have what I wanted to have. As soon as I started to take action, were things kind of messy sometimes? but, but life shook loose. And then when you get on the court and you start doing things, it's going to be messy and you're going to get elbowed in the face and, get a bloody nose from time to time, but you're playing the game. And I think, I don't know, most people aren't playing the game. They're just talking about playing the game.
Yeah. And that also comes back to ego, because who are you to say that you can't do something? Like, who are you to say you can't do it? And it's, I heard a point about Michael Jordan, which is a really interesting reminder. And they were talking about him. Picture Michael Jordan, junior year of high school,
right?
Cut from the varsity team, playing JV. If he were looking for reasons to say he couldn't be the greatest ever, they were all around him. And
right,
so the point here is, it doesn't really matter how many reasons out there exist for why you can't do something. It's just, who are you to say that you can't? The what if question. Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to think about that for a while today. Oh my gosh. Well, Chris, so much wisdom, and time has just flown by. Is there any final words you'd like to leave for our adventurers here who are listening in on this podcast, whether it's final piece of wisdom or something about what you're up to? Any last words for everybody here?
Yeah, I guess I would say, like, because this has come up in multiple conversations today, I guess my last word would be, the day you want to quit is the most important day of your life.
Fabulous. It's amazing. I think you should get that printed on some swag, actually, and hand it out to people. All right, adventurers. Well, you met him here. Chris Thompson, CEO of Sober Sidekick. I'm going to go ahead and put some links in the show notes for you. I'm also going to encourage everyone I have ever met has had someone who has struggled with addiction, or they have themselves. Share with them Sober Sidekick. It could be the greatest gift you ever give them. And, with that, thank you so much for coming on today, Chris. And we will see all of my adventures back here next time for our next episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.